Hello, everyone, or good morning, or good afternoon, whatever it is. Hello, Hot Mess Mom. I just read your comment about how you went to Walmart today and noticed a lot more people wearing masks again. And all I thought was, here we go again. Well, uh, that's kind of the title of the video that I'm doing right now. Is what do I call this? I think I called it "There's No Stopping It Now." Uh, I'd have to check to see exactly what I titled it. And everything always takes me a couple seconds. And what did I title this? Monkeypox, there's no stopping it now. And the impetus for this video came from a CBC news article, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. That's Canada's government funded media outlet. And they put out an article. A person with monkeypox at homeless shelter has been moved to isolation center, city says. So we now have monkeypox having been identified in Toronto, Canada's largest city, in a homeless shelter. Now, the officials will not. In an email on Sunday, the city declined to name the shelter where the person went or to specify how long the person was at the shelter. The city also wouldn't say whether this shelter is experiencing an outbreak as a result of the case. And as far as I'm aware, an outbreak, at least using the old COVID definitions, an outbreak would be considered 2 cases or more. I found that somewhat vexing during the COVID era that they would use the term outbreak, be it a nursing home or a hospital or whatever setting. They would use this word outbreak, which to my mind conjures up images of something spreading widely. Well, an outbreak during the COVID era, 2 identified cases qualified as an outbreak. And what you would see headlines: outbreak identified at a Toronto hospital. And then buried in the article, they would say an outbreak can be defined as 2 or more cases. And, it's just a term that I borrowed from Bill Maher. He referred to it as panic porn. But going back to the COVID era and very early January, February of 2020, before any of the mandates, before any of the insanity, our media and our government officials played down COVID. I recently watched a podcast that was done all the way back in April of 2020. And the gentleman doing the podcast had shared a number of media clips from CNN, ABC, CBS. This was based out of the United States. This guy's out of Phoenix, Arizona. So he'd taken these media clips from mainstream media outlets in the States, and he had done it. What he had shown what the media was saying about COVID in January and February of 2020. And basically, repeatedly, they kept on saying that Americans should be more worried about the flu than COVID, that COVID was not a big deal. From our Canadian context, for fellow Canadians, you'll recall that we were told not to worry about it. Global News ran an article listing 8 things to worry about more than COVID. And Theresa Tam, our Chief Medical Officer of Health for the entire country, she wouldn't even impose quarantine on people coming in from places like Wuhan, China, and Italy. It wasn't a big enough concern to warrant that kind of reaction. You'll probably also recall that back in February of 2020, the Trump administration opted to impose travel restrictions on people coming from places like Wuhan, China, and Italy. And Trump's critics accused him of overreacting. And I'm seeing very much a repeat. And I'm going to suggest a reason why I think the COVID, why a reason why I believe COVID was soft pedaled in January and February of 2020. And that's because I think they wanted to make sure, I'm using a broad term, they wanted to make sure that it had the best possible chance to entrench itself in the human population. This CBC News article identifying, that monkeypox is now in at least one homeless shelter in Toronto. They simply report that government officials aren't saying which shelter it is. They aren't saying if there are more cases, and they leave it there. If CBC was a genuinely honest and ethical journalistic outfit, what they would do if government officials aren't willing to give the answer, they would send investigative journalists down out into the community, and they would dig and they would find the answers. But that we don't live in an era of ethical journalism. We live in an era where our media outlets are simply there to pass along whatever information the government wants out there, and they comply. I brought up before the fact that I guess it was maybe probably around a year or so ago that a CBC News outlet in Edmonton engaged in unethical journalism by presenting an image of an ICU patient hooked up to a ventilator. And had it not been for eagle-eyed consumers of the news who spotted that it was a mannequin and not a real human being, CBC would have never come clean. And that is absolutely 100% unethical journalism. And CBC's claim after they were caught, they tried to pass it off as we made a mistake. It was an error in judgment. And that is, I'm sorry for swearing, but that is bullshit. Unless the director of CBC News responsible for putting that to air, unless that individual didn't even take first-year journalistic ethics, it is okay to present an image of a mannequin hooked up to a ventilator, provided that is disclosed. We are showing you an image of a mannequin hooked up to a ventilator to demonstrate what it would look like. However, this is not a real human being. This is not a person. This is a mannequin. Had they done that, then it is ethical journalism. So you have to look at anything. Doesn't matter what the media outlet is. If it's ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox in the States, CBC, CTV, Global in Canada, or Rebel or any. Because what we're seeing is an agenda being pushed. And as with COVID, I'm convinced that in January, February, the goal was to ensure that COVID had the best possible chance to firmly entrench itself in the human population so that basically it couldn't be stopped. And I don't think there's any stopping monkeypox at this point anyway. I think they could bring in whatever measures they want and it's going to spread. That is what viruses do. But regardless, I think they want to give it the best possible chance to become firmly entrenched in the human population so that it will spread widely. I'm also further convinced, non-expert guess if you want to call it that, that it's going to be spreading among those who've had 2, 3, or 4, or even 1, because of a condition referred to as, and you can look this up yourself, antibody dependency enhancement, which was a long known risk factor, long-term safety issue with certain types of pokes. And you can look into that yourself. So monkeypox is out there. With respect to the hot mess mom's comment regarding seeing a lot more people wearing masks, when I've been out, it seems to peak and valley. I don't know, it's probably 30% of the people I see when I'm in an indoor congregate setting like a grocery store or mall. It's probably 30 to 40% who are masked up. Nobody wears it properly. No one treats it like medical PPE. It's a virtue signaling device pulled out of a dirty germ-filled pocket or purse. Disgusting. I saw a remark today on Twitter, someone talking about the need for people to wear hazmat suits, full body PPE. People can't handle a mask properly in a sterile fashion, the way that doctors would handle their PPE when going into an OR, an operating room setting. There are strict wearing and handling procedures, and no one does this. No one walks into the grocery store and scrubs up and then masks and gloves up. No one does the proper handling, proper wearing. And now we'd expect people to do that for full body PPE? Forget it. It's not going to happen. The virus is going to spread. There are reports coming out now saying that, based on a study, saying that the virus will live on surfaces for as long as 18 months. I don't know how they can tell that without checking to see if it's still alive 18 months later, but I'm not a scientist, so if they said it, okay. Fomite transmission is what it's called, about what it is referred to as, and we all learned about that in middle school health class. The hot mess mom is bringing up a great point. Cross-contamination is too complex. Donning and doffing is a full mini course in any healthcare program. I used to work for a medical unit in the Canadian Forces. It's incredibly involved. Putting it on, taking it off. It's hazardous material. It has to be disposed of as such. No one does this crap. It's all just virtue signaling. It's all just people want to look good to friends, family, colleagues, neighbors. Oh, I care about people. I'm wearing this disgusting face diaper. And this monkeypox virus is going to spread around. Hot mess mom talking about cross-contamination. I mean, basically, as I said, we learned about it in health class when you were 12, 13 years old. I have a cold, I have the flu, but I'm either pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic, but I have the virus, it's in my system, and I wipe my nose, which, people touch eyes, nose, mouth without even thinking about it. It's a subconscious behavior. So you touch, and then I go and I touch a door handle. And then another individual comes in after me and they open the door, touching the door handle that I already touched. And then they touch their eyes, nose, mouth, the 3 points of entry, and bingo, presto, they're infected. There was a question within this article I was reading saying that 18 months that the virus can linger active on certain surfaces for as long as 18 months. And again, I don't know how they can tell that, but I'm leaving that aside. They brought up the question of viral load, and that's another question: is how much viral load, how many microns, or whatever the measurement is, how much of a virus do you have to get to become infected and get sick? And I don't think there's a definitive answer on that question, and I don't think it's necessarily one size fits all. I think there are individuals who have incredibly weak immune systems, incredibly weak systems, or in poor health, and even a tiny little bit of virus I'm imagining, non-expert guess, I'm imagining that, well, maybe someone who's in a very weak condition, maybe just a little tiny bit of virus will get them sick, whereas a healthier individual, that same amount of virus won't get them sick. But what I'm convinced is the fact that we have a lot of people. I think it's around 90% in Canada and around up around 70% in the United States who have weakened their immune systems. And so monkeypox is going to spread. I also think that right now, the reason it's being soft pedaled in the media and by our government officials is because they want to give it the best possible chance to spread. And I keep vacillating as to whether or not monkeypox will be used to impose similar type restrictions as we saw during COVID, lockdowns and mandates. Well, my back and forth on that, now I'm leaning toward believing that that's probably what we're going to see happen. They're doing the best they like with COVID in January and February of 2020. Now with monkeypox in the early stages, it's being soft pedaled to ensure it gets a good firm foothold in the human population. And then when it does blow up, it would give justification for imposing goodness knows what, perhaps more business closures. What's interesting right now is that the prime vector of transmission appears to be places like bathhouses. And I had a rough idea of what a bathhouse was, but given that I'm talking about this garbage, I had to look into it to find out. Okay, now I've got a fairly decent idea of what a bathhouse is. They exist in Toronto, and it's a place that might have swimming pool, sauna, and other facilities. And it's basically where typically men go to engage in random sexual encounters with other men, and sometimes more than one. Think an orgy type environment. And you talk about an ideal breeding ground to spread any pathogen, monkeypox and anything else. It's better than a cruise ship. It's a petri dish. You have the exchange of bodily fluids going on. You've got monkeypox, a disease that is said to have an incubation period that can be as long as 21 days. With COVID, as I recall, the incubation period was considered to be 5 to 8 days. Flu, influenzas, just 2-3. And the reason they said that COVID was so much more transmissive than flu was because the flu incubation period was just 2-3 days, very short. COVID was considered 5 to 8 days. So the suggestion was that people were pre-symptomatic and going out and spreading it, and then only isolating after they started to display symptoms from it. And that's why it was so hard to get under control. Well, monkeypox is said to incubate for as long as 3 weeks, 21 days. So you'll have people unaware of the fact that they're infected with a transmissible virus out and circulating. And I do not believe that this is, yes, right now it is overwhelmingly impacting men who have sex with men. So I say gay and bisexual men. But I think as time goes on, that it's going to expand well outside of that specific narrow demographic, and it's going to blow up. And again, there's no stopping it. Interestingly, I read an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association, typically referred to as JAMA. And this JAMA article, they had conducted research or conducted a survey on the LGBTQ community. I think it was 150,000 plus individuals were surveyed, LGBTQ. And among white men who identified as gay, they found the vax rate was 94%. And this was done between August of 2021 and October of that same year. So almost a year ago now. I suspect, and I think I'm on fairly safe ground, even though it's a non-expert guess, that if it was 94% in October of 2021, that by the end of July of 2022, that it's damn near 100%. You're probably looking at one of the most double vax, triple vax, quadruple vax populations in Canada and the United States in any country. So if my non-expert opinion guess is right, that we're looking at ADE, antibody dependency enhancement, which you can read up on it, basically means a weakening of the innate God-given immune system. This is going to be out there. And at some point, my best spitball, throw it against the wall guess is that we're probably looking end of August, beginning of September. And at that point, the declaration of another pandemic, sure, can absolutely see it. And what follows after that, goodness knows. Hot Mess Mom is asking, what do you think the effects will be on our children? Children are being stunted socially, emotionally, and education-wise. I often wonder, even the pro must see that it cannot continue. Unfortunately, fear is during World War II, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, told the American people that the only thing to fear was fear itself. Fear in of itself, just fear alone, is so debilitating. It robs an individual's ability to think critically. Fear triggers a fight or flight response, and it shuts down the higher brain functions that are up in the frontal lobes, shuts it down. We become responsive creatures, responsive animals. And, going back to my Christian faith, as I often like to do, the Bible 365 times says, fear not. We are not to have a spirit of fear. Some might accuse me, and I've had it said of me that, well, you're spreading fear. And I don't look at it that way. The way I look at it is I'm spreading awareness, because the antidote to fear is knowledge. And forewarned is forearmed. Knowing ahead of time that there's at least the potential for monkeypox to become unstoppable among the population who's said 2-3 times or 4 that it's going to spread widely, knowing ahead of time that the government may very well, and I think they will, impose the same kind of restrictions they did back in March of 2020, and they went on for darn near 2 years. Ontario, where I live, Ontario, Canada, the mandates, I mean, there's still some that are still around. We have this Arrive Can app, which I don't understand because I'm not a techie. I do not even own I own a cell phone, but it's not a smartphone. I don't have data. My phone is for texting and talking, and that is it. And I'd be happy to get rid of the texting even. I'm a child of the 70s. I would love to go back to the way the world was in the 1970s, when homes had one television, one telephone with a huge long cord on it. But, I mean, that's unrealistic. That's not going to happen. So as I was saying, the restrictions in Ontario didn't really come off until March. And we still have some, like this Arrive Canada app, and we still have some, like if you go for blood work, for example, most blood clinics, most labs where they take blood from people, settings like that are still requiring these stupid masks. But other than that, things have gotten more or less back to normal. People can wear a mask if they want into a grocery store or whatever. But the biggest driver of how children, to get to the hot mess mom's question of what do you think the effect on our kids will be, I think a lot of it is dependent upon how parents react. There are, if the parents are fearful, the children will be fearful. Children mimic their parents' response, especially younger children. And in terms of socialization, getting out, typically I've been able to find that there are individuals who, like me, have if not exactly the same, very similar outlooks, very similar viewpoints. And so I've been able, because I do have a younger guy. My youngest child isn't even 10 years old yet. So, we refer to the summer of 2020. That was the summer of candy. And that's in reference to the name of our dog, which we got on March 18th of 2020. We got Candy the Wonder Pup, who's crashed out on the couch right now. So we got Candy on March 18th. So during that first summer, when all this was kind of brand new, we had the dog to preoccupy us. The following summer, we started hitting the road and started going to Henry Hildebrand's church in Aylmer, Ontario, even staying over with members of the congregation. We also went to Kitchener-Waterloo to Jacob Riome's Trinity Bible Chapel that was gathering without masks or distancing or any of that other nonsense. A church in Napanee, a church up in Peterborough. We found congregations, people who had their eyes open to what is really going on, who are firmly rooted in God's word in the Bible. And we had a fantastic summer. And this summer, we're referring to it as the summer of the pond, as we have friends who have a property that has a pond on it, and we've been going swimming. I think we've been, so far this summer, we've been 4 times already, and we're going to go more, God willing. And so I think that has done, that has been enormously beneficial to my little guy's, my youngest, mental health, and to keep him from being stunted socially, emotionally. In terms of education, he's learning. He's reading well. His math skills are off the charts. So goodness knows, who knows where the world's going to be in another 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So we've got to survive right now and hold on tight. And victory is coming for those who endure. And if you're not in relationship with the Lord of Lords and King of Kings, reach out. You can reach out to me on Twitter, and there are other individuals better qualified than me to help build a relationship with Christ. But if you want to reach out to me, I'll do the best I can. So I'll leave you with that. Monkeypox isn't stopping. There's no stopping it now. It's coming. But if you haven't, I can't say I'm not concerned at all, that I have zero concern, because I do have a fear that as it circulates among the population who's taken that I might get it, and I don't want it. It looks gross and disgusting, and I've heard that those sores or lesions or the rash or whatever they call it, I have heard that it can be absolutely excruciating. Mind you, I'm basing that on what I'm reading in media reports. And how much faith and trust should I put in that? I don't completely disregard it. I just take a very jaundiced view and am very skeptical. But not everything you read in the mainstream is false. The best propaganda has a core seed of truth. I'll end it by telling you the story of how World War II started. When before Germany invaded Poland, the German people had it reported that soldiers dressed in Polish uniforms had attacked a German radio station on the German-Polish border. And that was not inaccurate reporting. That did happen. There were soldiers dressed in Polish uniforms who attacked a German radio station right on the German-Polish border. Truth. What they, lying by omission, what they failed to tell the German people is that the soldiers wearing the Polish uniforms were not Polish, they were Germans. The Nazis had guys put on Polish uniforms and attack themselves. It's called a false flag operation, well known in militaristic circles, and that was used to sell the war. The German people were no more evil than any other population. The German people bought into the lie that the attack against Poland was a response to something that really, in point of fact, never happened. Poland never attacked Germany, but that's not what people believed. And perception, for most, is reality. So God bless. I've gone on too long. It's going to be a slow moving train. As I say, I don't think we're going to see the media take the brakes off, and I think they'll go full panic porn eventually, but I think we're looking at late August, early September. So we have another month. And have a good night, everyone.